everybody. Happy Wednesday, and thank you for joining the Teams in 20 today. It's great to have you back, and if you're new, very much welcome. So today's session is all about building community, something that we do every single day and is super important part of every job, people coming together and creating that connection. And we've got the lovely Nick Ledger, who's going to be leading this session today. Nick is an absolute pro at Teams, Viva Engage and building communities. So really looking forward to hearing everything that he's got to say there. Over to you, Nick.
Perfect. Thanks, Annabelle. And yeah, hello, everyone. So as a quick introduction, my name's Nick Ledger. I am one of our employee experience specialists here at Microsoft. And I've been working with Viva Engage and what was Yammer for probably about 10 years now. I actually started my kind of Microsoft journey as a comms manager using tools like what was Yammer at the time, launching that across a global organization, and really thinking about what does our community structure need to be? How do we get people engaged? And I've spent the last sort of 5 or 6 years at Microsoft working with customers on exactly the same pieces. How do I really get my employees engaged and using the tools effectively and getting value from it? So very excited to be speaking with you all today. And yeah, as we're going along, please do feel free to ask any questions you might have into the chat. I actually wanted to start today with a little bit of context, right? Because I think this is really important when we're looking at anything that's going to be work for us to do, right? Anything that means that we've got to go out and ask the business to be doing things or asking individuals to be doing things. And so I really wanted to kind of share this research that we've been doing around why getting people to use tools like Viva Engage is so important. And it's through some research we did where we looked at every single Viva Engage user across the world, and we looked at the moment that their Microsoft license got switched on to when it got switched off, so we could work out when they joined an organization and left. And what we found is that when people were using Viva Engage, they were more likely to be retained. In fact, we found that if they were writing content compared to not engaging at all, they were 33% more likely to be retained. And that's not to say Viva Engage is the kind of sort of the silver bullet here that kind of keeps everyone in the business, right? There are lots of things that go into that, pay, manager connection, development, all things are important. But what it does show is that there is a certain level of engagement that does mean people feel more connected, more valued, and want to stay in those organizations longer. And that's just the people who are writing content, right? What was really interesting is that even people who were just viewing content were 11% more likely to be retained. And even then, when we looked at the leadership part of this, when we looked at leaders who were engaging, we found that they were actually encouraging employees to post. And so some of the pieces we'll talk to today will kind of reference the idea of getting our leaders, to be the kind of figureheads of these communities and kind of sponsors. And so as part of that, what we are going to be talking about today is Viva Engage. For those of you who are new to this and you're thinking, is this not Yammer? Over the course of the last 12 months or so, we've been shifting away from using Yammer to rebranding it and evolving the platform into Viva Engage. And so Viva Engage is now the place where we can go and find communities, we can see what our leaders are up to, what our colleagues are up to, and follow those people that we find interesting. And as part of that, we've been bringing in a lot of new capabilities. And I'll just flash this up on the screen because it's always a question we get asked around what pieces are included in our existing licensing and what are in the kind of new premium licensing. A lot of what you already have today, right? And everything pretty much we're going to be talking about today with communities is in your existing Microsoft 365 licenses. So still the ability to have communities, to post messages and announcements, to restrict communities, to report messages, to close conversations, all that stuff is still included in your existing Viva Engage license. So nothing to worry on that front. But what is coming is a lot more capabilities around, how do we increase community engagement? How do we increase visibility of what's happening in communities? How do we coach better community management? And they are going to sit in the premium license. And there is a trial available. There's a link there on the chat on the screen that you can click, and they'll take you to that trial license. And we'll share the link as well in the follow-up. But jumping straight into kind of communities. So if you think about the purpose of a community, one of the things I always see in organizations is basically too many communities, right? Or not a lot of thought around what are we actually doing with this community. Sometimes they're created because it seems like a good idea at the time, but with little thought or little plan in place, and very quickly they become empty and then kind of disappear into the ether. And that's not what we want, right? We want vibrant, exciting, engaged communities that ultimately bring benefit to employees. And so one of the first activities I often do with my customers is essentially start thinking about what is your sort of community structure, right? If we're really going to be thinking about how we create these engaging communities, what are the things that we think people are going to be interested in, just as a starting point? And so there's official community capabilities that let you define this. And if you think about the starting point being the all company community, right? And then being able to rename that, maybe restrict that, so just your comms team or leaders can post in it, however you want to structure it, that's your starting point. But what other kind of exciting and engaging communities do you want to have in place, right? Like maybe you're an organization with lots of different brands and you want to bring people together underneath those brands and have them, excited about the things that are happening. And maybe you want to have a bit more focused on departments or divisional. So the UK teams or the Americas teams can be able to speak with other people in similar geographies to them and connect on different things that will be relevant to those specific areas. Maybe it's more organizational value based, right? Maybe it's goals of the business around sustainability or innovation or well-being, where you want to connect people who are passionate about these areas and want to share things. Employee resource groups are always another great place to start. Do people have a place where they can share what's happening with employee resource groups? Do they have a place where they can go and ask questions and find experts and find advice from other people in similar situations to themselves? And then finally, one that I always love to see is the more social and CSR activities. How do you have communities that encourage people to share a little bit of fun, a little bit of insight? I've got a great colleague of mine who works in the US, and I often get to see what he's posting up to with his dog or his cooking, and it means that whenever I'm then chatting with him on a call, I can reference some of that stuff, and the ice gets broken quite quickly. So absolutely, so think about that structure, right? And I'd love you to go into the chat right now as well, and just type some of the communities that you have seen that were probably the most impactful. I know certainly one for me back when I was before I worked at Microsoft was seeing the parent community be created. And it was absolutely brilliant to see because we hadn't really thought about it at the time. We'd thought, this is a business tool. We want this to be very much business focused and aligned to our objectives. And supporting parents was absolutely one, but it wasn't something we planned to use the tool for. But people were able to go in and ask questions about, I've just come back from maternity leave and I'm struggling with this, or has anyone got any advice on this? And then seeing fellow colleagues be able to reach out to them and say, well, this is how I handled it. And, instantly you saw the value of creating that connection. And so I'd love to hear just a couple of examples from people in the chat on communities that you've seen working really well. Share that insight with the broader team. So once you've got your kind of community structure in place, then start thinking about this idea of community management. So actually, who's going to be responsible for that community? Because it's not necessarily going to be your communications teams. It's not going to be your IT teams. There needs to be a defined owner for that. And so this can be a person that is very much aligned to it, like those employee resource groups. Maybe it's the kind of team that help run them. Maybe it's people who are just really passionate in those sort of specific communities and are looking for taking on more responsibility. But it's really important to make sure you find those right people, because otherwise a community can very quickly go quiet, right? We always love the idea of creating a community and you build it and they will come and they will engage, but people are people and sometimes they do need nurturing to sort of produce content and get involved. And so a great kind of starting point once you've got your community set up is to really think about what is that community manager there to do? Because actually there's a lot of things that you might want to encourage for people in the group, right? You might want to be sharing insights around the theme of what the community is all about. You might want to be encouraging people offline to go and post in that community as different things pop up. You might want to sort of crowdsource some more champions, right? You might find that actually there's 5 or 10 people who are posting a lot here and they're already passionate, and can we get them involved? So really think about what kind of behaviors do you want to see in that community, and how are you as a community manager helping to make that happen? And then also think about what capabilities you have as a community manager or as a community admin, as we call it in Viva Engage. Being able to brand your community, add banners and cover photos, and being able to edit the info box with hyperlinks and context around what the community is about. Being able to mark questions as having a best answer or close conversations if they're becoming inappropriate. Being able to pin conversations to the top of the list so you can really highlight key pieces, run live events, pin resources, all these different elements, and of course be able to push announcements out to the business. And with announcements, this is always something I always ask people to tread very carefully with. Think about the information overload you can potentially push on people. Announcements are great when they're used effectively, but always be mindful about the interruption that you're kind of pushing on people when sending something out. So always use them for things that are really going to be impactful for those individuals. And here's just a couple of bits, and same on the next slide as well, around some ideas around how you can start to structure that community management itself, right? So from an adoption point of view, what's my purpose? How am I going to address these pieces? From an engagement point of view, how am I going to keep them coming back? How am I going to get them really interested in all this stuff? How am I going to grow it, right? Have I got some targets here? Do I want to have a proportion represented in the business? Do I want to align this to certain business objectives? And then, of course, what's really key, and I'll share some examples of content in a second, but think about the content you're sharing, right? Is it actually interesting? It's always amazing when we hear kind of feedback from people if they've created a community and they see no one's engaging. When you look at the content and it's very dry or very text heavy, not particularly of interest. Really think about actually what's the content that's going to inspire people and get people excited and want to engage. And then, of course, I'll share this as well, which is a kind of a framework that you can use for different communities. So being able to go in and share that with community managers. I've seen this used in a variety of ways. Sometimes you can create a community in Viva Engage for community managers and share content in there to help people, think about this kind of stuff. And this is a great framework to share with your different teams. And then if you think about that content, right, that I've just talked about. So here's just some examples of what we do in Microsoft, and how do we kind of start to think about making content fun and engaging, right? We put a lot of GIFs in, we use a lot of video content, we use a lot of emojis. We try to make things quite sort of interesting and eye-catching for people, but also very detailed in terms of what it is that's going to be of benefit to people to engage with that post. We like to tell stories, right? So we really encourage all areas of our business to do storytelling. And this is using the new article post type in Viva Engage Premium, but being able to have something that really details out a broader story, not just a quick post, but something that really captures the attention of those people who may be interested in reading a lot more content. And then personal pieces, right? Whether it's celebrations or praise or recognition, and making sure that we highlight all the great stuff that's happening. And again, doing so in a very visual way that captures people's attention. And so all great ways of producing content. And I can see in the chat there are loads of brilliant ideas here around, I think, Joe, you've mentioned military and Microsoft community. Samantha, I love the Let's Get Digital one to share tips and promote new features and help with that broader adoption. And be a place, right, where people can go and ask questions. I can see Graham, things like Photo Club and Dogs of Company Name and Fact of the Day, all brilliant ones that, again, just kind of encourage people to utilize the platform. Because obviously when they're doing the social stuff, they're also going to see the more business-related stuff as well. So there's a nice, healthy balance of things that are going to keep people interested, but also, get them to also digest some business content as well. So we've got our community set up, we've got our content. Sometimes moderation is required. And so I wanted to make sure we just touched on this very briefly. One of the key things is to be proactive, right? Don't just let your community not be kind of looked after. Make sure that you're reviewing that content regularly. What are people posting? Sometimes you might find people putting posts up that maybe aren't of interest. Maybe they are sharing too much. Maybe they are sharing things that aren't going to be relevant for the people in that community. It's a conversation with them to say, actually, is there a better place to put that content? And one of the great things that we've introduced now is storylines if you're using it in Viva Engage. So storylines is essentially your own profile. And so if you're finding, say, for example, someone's posting too much content, you can always recommend to them maybe it's a better place to post on your storyline than that community in that instance. But of course, you have got controls. So you've got the ability to close a conversation off if suddenly that conversation is going a direction you don't want it to, or even delete the post as well. But it's always something that we'd really recommend as an absolute last resort, because you never want people to feel like they are being censored. And then one for the IT admins on the call and on watching the video, look at how you can expire older communities, right? So if you've got communities that haven't been utilized over a period of days or months, why not look at actually removing them after a period of time? And you can set that to happen automatically. If you've had a Viva Engage network for a long time, you can sometimes end up with a little bit of clutter. This will help you to automatically start deleting ones out over a period of time. And then the last part, before we cover off some questions, are the first one being some coming soon items. So coming soon, we are going to be bringing new answers capabilities into communities. So if you've got a community like Ask HR or Ask IT, or like the Microsoft News and Support community, or like the one Samantha mentioned before, being able to kind of automatically reuse answers to those questions is going to be really powerful. And we're going to be giving you more analytics alongside that as well. And that'll help you understand actually what's the benefit of reusing all these answers to the business. So yeah, they'll start to help you with duplicate posts. We're also going to be bringing in more ways to customize communities. So being able to pin multiple posts at the top of the page, be able to add in business leads and the business goals for certain departments, and obviously all the different kind of events and campaigns that you might be running there as well. And actually, there's a few other pieces as well. If you ever go on the Microsoft 365 roadmap, really recommend it, especially for Viva Engage. It's a great way to go in and see actually what's top of mind. And we're going to have some new Engage community analytics coming in April. And I think on that note, we will wrap up with some resources. So 2 final links. If we can just jump ahead, Annabelle, thank you. So Microsoft Viva Engage adoption site, loads of great material on there that will hopefully be of use. And SWOOP analytics as well. There's loads of great videos with Manchester Airport Group and Marks and Spencers, and yeah, loads of different organizations sharing their insights from everything from relaunching Viva Engage to community management to all kinds of different areas. So definitely recommend looking at both of them. Perfect. Thank you.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Nick. That was super interesting. Love the part around the tips to actually keep people engaged in those communities. That's always sometimes a challenge for me. You know, when people are in there, how do you keep them active? So that was really awesome. Thank you so much for that. And some great resources there as well. And thank you everybody for joining. We'll see you next time.